about trying to be popular with the ladies and failing. The boys have been hard at work, and the structure is starting to come together. Yep.
Why don't they pluck the old needles?
They'll get to that once we're on there. フルパンは何で飛んだんですか？
フルパン？それはもうちょっとかけながら下パンを取ってったりします。
So they'll do that once they get onto the finer detail work.
枝がみんなちょっとこうなってますから、かけながら直しながらこう揃ったら下パンを取ってったり作業します。
And so they will, once they have set the main structure and then get onto the wiring of the secondary branches, some of those branches, as you'll see, some of those secondary branches are being cut off as they're going, and more will be removed once they get onto the finer detail work. And then as the branches are being placed, then the orientation of some of those branches may change. And so some of those needles will be pointing downwards, some will be pointing in different directions. And so those will be removed as that process is happening. Does anybody have any other questions? Particularly about ladies. Who was the question?
Does protection that does use only light sulfur or use other products?
人工車両を守るために養料だけ使うんですか？それは他の種類とか
使ってないですね。
Just so the question was, does Mr. Suzuki use any other products for protecting the deadwood, and other than lime sulfur? And the answer is no, just lime sulfur.
ちょうどうちの庭園が流れてますので、ご覧になってください。
Another video of Mr. Suzuki's garden and some of his work. So please enjoy the video.
ちょうどこの間パリの国風展の時に東京の美術館を見てからわざわざお店まで来てくださったお客様がこんな風にたくさんいらっしゃいますので、すごく僕嬉しかったです。
So just recently during the 100th Kokufu exhibition, there were a great number of people who, after visiting the show, made the long trek up to his nursery, which is in Obuse, Nagano, which is quite difficult to get to from Tokyo. It's basically a whole day trip, and so a lot of people made that trip, which made me very, very happy.
この度このトロフィーまで飛行機で来させていただいて、着いてから皆さんこんなとこからわざわざ来てくださったっていうことに余計感動しました。またぜひ。
And so the respect for all of those people who made the trip from Tokyo up to his nursery was made even deeper after being on an aeroplane for 14 hours coming here. So he realised just the lengths that people go to in order to visit his nursery. So he's very grateful that people do that. I invite you all to make that long, arduous trek to his nursery. And as you can see, it is very much worth it.
My side, I happen to be one of those people who visited his nursery about 2 weeks ago in Japan. If you go there in the middle of winter, like I did, it is cold, it is freezing, and the images will be a bit different because the benches will be empty and the trees will be stored in a greenhouse. So plan your trip according to the season. If you go in the winter, the outdoors areas are mostly empty and you have to do it in a greenhouse, but still the greenhouse is then nice, 18 Celsius, outside the snow is falling. Also an interesting experience. Are there any questions in the audience of what's happening? I see a lot of hands going up. Gentleman here in front.
Mr. Suzuki's opinion, what are the flaws in this tree?
Okay, the question that has been posed is what are the weaker points of this tree?
その欠点ということなんですけど、鉢の中で人間が一から作った木は欠点を少なくできますけど、この木は山で壮絶に来たから欠点がまたその木の魅力、例えばうちに枝がないとかいろんな枝付き、それがまたこの木の魅力になりますので、それを最大限に引き出してあげたいと思います。
So the question was about the faults of the tree, and if you consider a tree which has been grown in a pot its entire life, a man-made tree, and then it is more appropriate to look at perhaps the faults of the tree and to focus on those. But when you're working with natural material, something which has been grown up in a mountain, those sort of faults should be looked upon as character features. So for example, if there was inverse taper, this bulge at the bottom, or on this side there are no branches, they should be looked at as character features which should be understood, appreciated, and used as part of the design.
欠点も例えば、こういう腕が長かったらこうに角度を変えることで短く見ますでしょう。そういうところを巧みに調整しながら欠点をできるだけ隠したり、それも個性ですけど、そうにやっていろいろ表現していきます。
And so if we had what would be considered to be a very long branch, which many people would look at as being a fault or an undesirable branch, by changing the angle of the tree, by rotating it around, or by manipulating it in such a way as to sort of hide that, is the way to kind of go about making a tree. To turn the faults into character.
この木は、弘明がコロナの技術展で内閣総理大臣賞を取った木です。
So this is a tree that his son took the Prime Minister's Award with for changing in quite dramatic fashion.
この木もここが欠点だとしたらこういうことをすることによってかえって面白くなりますので、そういうのを巧みに引き出してあげます。
And so what many people would consider to be a flaw in that sort of straight trunk, through a change of viewpoint and a change of angle, those faults can be turned into positive characteristics, and then it's the job of the professional, particularly Mr. Suzuki, in order to sort of hide the less desirable parts and to really bring out the beauty that's contained within the tree. I think it's a more of a positive approach, looking at the flaws as character features rather than things to be hidden.
この木は岩崎泰造さんといって世界の盆栽をいろいろ広めてくれた会長さんがお持ちだった木です。
So this was a tree that was owned by Mr. Daiso Iwasaki, who was a very famous collector who really helped to spread the beauty of bonsai around the world.
これは、銀座にブルガリのビルがございまして、それがちょうど10周年なのでブルガリとコラボした。
So these rock plantings were created for a collaboration between Bulgari, the luxury brand that had a building in Ginza, which is a super high-end area of Tokyo, and they were having their 10th anniversary, so he made those rock plantings for that.
空伝を取らせていただいた、国空賞を取らせていただいた昨日7月ですね。
So this is a tree that won the Kokufu Prize at the 93rd exhibition 7 years ago.
国空賞がすごく大事なのは、木の樹格もそうですけど、それにある鉢、色、それがトータル的に素晴らしくないと、国空伝に入選することも大変ですけど、そこで頂点を取るというのは総合的に優れてないとダメです。
So the Kokufu Prize is actually awarded at the exhibition itself. So the judging process to get into the Kokufu, the trees are basically lined up on a conveyor belt, and they get past in front of the judges, and they are awarded a score. Trees that get above a certain score are entered into the exhibition. So at that point, they're not seen with the stand or the accent plant or anything like that. It's just the tree by itself. Then the trees are put onto display, and the Kokufu Prize will be awarded to a tree that is obviously of a great high quality, beautiful, the tree shape itself, but the accessories that go with it, so the pot, the stand, the accent plant, all those things are all judged in combination to be awarded the Kokufu Prize.
木もすごく古いのが素晴らしいんですけど、鉢も例えばこれは金葉って言いまして、150年から200年前の鉢になっています。
And so obviously the trees themselves are very old, but the pots that they're planted in match the age and the character of the tree perfectly. So the pot that we saw there, was a blue glazed antique Chinese pot from 150 to 200 years old, and so that is considered as part of the judging process.
作展というのはプロの技術展ですね。
So the next trees that are coming up are part of the Sakufu Ten, which is the award for the exhibition that professionals enter themselves.
ちょっと面白いお話なんですけど、鉢も300年前のとかいろいろありますけど、家内も有名作家もいますので、その話をいたしますね。
So the tree previously, the juniper, the pot itself was a 300-year-old pot, and the table was made by a very famous table maker.
家内の話なんですけど、私は長野に住んでますから、うちから1時間ぐらいのところに長岡という場所があります。
And so, talking about the tables, they live in the Nagano area, and about an hour's drive away is a place called Nagaoka.
そこに、小川優さんという方が今から、100年前いらっしゃいました。
And there was a craftsman by the name of Ogawa Yuzan who lived there over 100 years ago.
そしてその方はどういう作家かというと、家内を作ったりいろんなものを作る作家なんですけど、すごく大事なのは材料はおじい様が集めた材料を使いました。
And so he was a craftsman who made things out of wood, including the sort of display tables that you see there, and other objects from wood. The important thing about his work is that he used material that his grandfather started to acquire.
それはどういうことかと言いますと、同じシタンとか高級な材料でも100年寝かすことによって多少乾燥して周りが出ます。それをきれいに引いて乾燥しきった木を使って同じ材料から一つの作品をつなぎ目も全部合わせて作ります。
And so the wood that's used, mainly kind of stamp, roll rosewood, a lot of the sort of exotic hardwoods that we get used, they dry out over time, and they bend and warp. And he used those woods, used that timber materials in order to make his pieces, including all of the joints and all the decorative pieces that you see.
そして、例えばこの材料からこの部分を全部切り出したりして つなぎを作るんですけど、一つの材料で100年も寝かしたので組み込んでるから、外に炎天下に出しても一切狂わないんですよ。
So because we use the kind of the old, very dry wood, he would use, for example, one piece of wood and carve pieces out, and then they would be sort of joined together. But because the wood was so dry and so old, it sort of basically fused together. And whenever it was sort of taken out and used, there would be no kind of warping or separation of the wood that you often see with younger pieces of timber.
僕はそのユーザーの最後のお弟子さんに会ったんですけど、その方はどういう方かというと、最後ショックが課題が出来上がったら仕上げを日本の刀砥石の細かいので全部仕上げて磨いて、最後は人間の指で全部磨くんですよ。
And so he met Yuzan's like sort of final sort of apprentice and saw the work that goes into creating such tables. So obviously these techniques were handed down throughout the generations, and obviously after sort of finishing the construction of the piece, they would then sort of polished and lacquered and such like, and very, very sort of finely polished. But the final sort of touches were all done just with the thumb.
その作品も現在も何点か残ってまして、見るとすごく感動するのは、その細工の美しさと、その材料がおじいさんの代に集めたものだから、自分の代で作る材料がなくなって、最後は審議に入って、もうこれ以上の作品できないからって鉄を飛び込んで死んじゃったような人なんですよ。
And so there's a number of pieces that of these sort of super famous stands that still exist today, and every time you see them, Mr. Suzuki sees them, he gets to sort of touch them. He's amazed at the incredible detail of the work that's gone into it, and he is very kind of respectful and moved by this idea that the material that was used has come from sort of previous generations, and the Yuzan and the apprentices after they sort of used up all of that material, they couldn't make anything that was as good ever again. And so it's this kind of like this peak of craftsmanship and the material sort of coming together.
それでその方の評価が日本の戦前80年以上前の銀座三越の売り立てに売りに出たんですよ。それ目録があって、日本の家が300円の時代にその人の課題が3000円で売れてたんですよ。
And so the Yuzan, his work, talking about pre-war sort of time, so 1930s. They were put for sale in a high-end department store in Ginza, and they were sold at the time for 100 times the price of an average Japanese house at the time.
なんでその食の話をしたかって言いますと、盆栽も鉢の中で100年人の愛情で育てられていい姿になったものは、鉢も素晴らしいのを植えるとすごく調和されます。調和された中で、しかも花代までそういう古いものを使うと、もう総合的にロールスロイスみたいになるから、ロールスロイスっていいんだよ。伝統と風格と全てここに凝縮された、その魅力はもう何とも言えないものがあります。ただトロフィーで見させてあげて展示品もかなり高レベルだから、またそういうところもまた今後見つめていくとなお一層すごくなるかと思います。
So the reason for talking so much about that stand was to really again highlight the importance of making the most out of the trees, and whilst the work that we're doing here today, for example, is very important in terms of the creation of the trees, when it comes to display, in order to elevate the character, the quality of the tree, to achieve a perfect kind of like harmony and balance. It's necessary to use the accessory objects of the pot and the stand, which are of equivalent character and quality, and have had the same amount of love and care put into the creation of them. And when all of those sort of things come together, it elevates everything to an extraordinarily high level. And coming here and seeing the exhibition and seeing trees of a superb quality and displays which are starting to kind of reach up to much higher levels, he is very pleased to see that and encourages everybody to start to think more and more about those other ideas around how to elevate the quality of the tree.
だんだん僕も60過ぎましたので、この年になると、今回第1回に飾った五葉松が100回展にたまたま縁があって私飾らせていただいて、その木をこう見つめたりすると、100年の間には戦争あったり水かけてくれなくて枯れちゃった盆栽がある中で、100年後の今もそういう姿で生きてるのを見ると、例えば日々いろんな自分でも悩みがあったりすると、盆栽さんが「お前こんなこと大したことないよ」とか、だんだんそんなことをいろいろ語りかけてくれさるような年頃になりました。
And so, he's now reached past he's now into his 60s, and the way in which he kind of looks at bonsai is beginning to change, and particularly going back to the talk about the tree, which was in the first Kokafu and then has continued on to the 100th. All of the difficult things that that tree has suffered through. So, for example, it's been through the war, been through times when people have not been able to water it. A lot of the Japanese pre-war bonsai died as a result of what was happening. So for those trees to have gone through all of those things, when he has any sort of difficulties in his own life, as he has things that he's undecided on, or he's feeling kind of like under the weather and things like that, he looks at such trees now with a different mindset, and thinks that all of my problems are nothing compared to what this tree has been through and has survived. And so he gains sort of strength and power from seeing those trees. And so his outlook on bonsai has changed over the last few years as he's aged.
とにかくなんか年齢が経つば経つほど盆栽が余計好きになって、なんかまた生まれ変わってもやりたいなと思ってます。
So as he's got older, his love for bonsai has got deeper and deeper, and given the chance, he would do bonsai again from the start. Does anybody have any questions?
ありますか？
How did you come into possession of the tree community?
大体木がこう
So the question was, how did Mr. Suzuki come into possession of the tree that was in the first Kokafu?
その木はたまたま栃木県でちょっと荒れた姿になって生きてて、それで出会ってたまたま私の手に入って、ある程度きれいに蘇生してからまた私のお客様のところに行って、私のお客さんの周りで30年ぐらいだったんですね。それで最後大事にしてくださったお客様が、がんで亡くなってしまって、でも最後まで見たいということで家に置いていたらまたちょっと弱ってしまったんですよ。それから私また見学させていただいて元気になったので今回飾らせていただいたんですけど、その中には、見てるといろんな思いがありますね。
So he first came into contact with the tree over 30 years ago, where he found it in a quite rough state in Tochigi, an area of Japan, and he acquired the tree, and it required some work, effort in order to get it into a good state. And then it was sold to a good customer of his who had it for a long time. for 30 years, and well, close to 30 years. And then that customer, he got cancer, and it was one of the trees that the owner wanted to keep by his side until the final end, because he liked it so much. And so unfortunately, the tree suffered a little bit as a result of that. And after he passed, the tree came back to Mr. Suzuki, who spent a number of years recovering it back to health and back to the shape. And so there was a lot of emotional attachment and memories with that tree.
本当に100回、1回から100回っていう木は日本に3本残ってまして、たまたまこの木は五葉松っていう点でも乾燥に強かったから生き長えられた。あと100年の間に、たまたま水かけてもらった人がいたからっていう、すごくラッキーな木ですね。
So there's only 3 trees that made it from the 1st to the 100th cockapoo, and this tree is a white pine, which is very drought resistant, drought tolerant, and so it's quite a strong tree, and so it was very lucky that it was the right species to survive during times of hardship. It was also very lucky that there was somebody there to water it when it was necessary.
3本生き残ってて、1本はエゾマツがあるんですよね。エゾマツは日本の立川っていう国営の盆栽美術館に1本あります。それはたまたま長野県にあったから空襲にもまず生き残った木なんですよね。
So one of the other trees is an Ezo spruce. It's now in the well, it's a national bonsai collection in Tachikawa. Like a big park, and there's a collection there, so it's in there. But that tree was also originally in Nagano as well. Only the strongest survive. Any other questions? There's somebody waving their hand there.
What are these considerations for getting the branching? And also, what would be different if it was another species, for example, juniper?
Okay. So the question is, what are the considerations for the branching? Do you mean the arrangement of the branches? So the shape of the foliage pads. Okay. So the arrangements. So what is the consideration for the foliage pads in terms of it as a species, and would it be any different for junipers, etc.？
花を作るときには広がりとか、1だからこういう一つにするとか、シートとか違う。
おっしゃる通りで、例えばエゾマツだったら枝をこう薄く作って重ねていくとか、心拍でしたらどこからも吹きますから、ちょっと枝の肩を見せたりって表現して、一位もこう先端を詰めたりとどんどん中に吹くから、おっしゃるように広げて日が当たるようにしてあげます。
And so the creation of the branching, the foliage pads, is sort of dependent upon the species in terms of their natural kind of growth habit, and also kind of like how they will respond to the work that gets done. And so, for example, Ezo spruce, their natural kind of growth habit is to have very sort of flat, long branches. And so, creating foliage pads, that idea is reproduced. So not only does that kind of give a natural impression, it's also how they will grow stronger. For things like junipers and taxus, they are able to send out adventitious buds, back buds quite freely, so buds further on the inside, and so sort of spreading out the branches, sort of creating a little bit of space in between the branches and the buds is done initially. thought we were getting a soundtrack there, is done initially so that like a maximal kind of like volume can be created in the knowledge that lots of buds will form on the inside and begin to grow out. Okay, it's very similar with junipers. Okay, and so quite often the branches are sort of bent down to show off the kind of the shoulders of the branch, it's like the branch divisions, in the knowledge that new buds will come from the inside as well. Does that answer your question? But the general idea that he's trying to get across is that there's a kind of a practical approach as well as an aesthetic idea. So you're trying to recreate the kind of cloud-like nature that you would see growing on the tree in junipers. Okay, and so with the Ezosprecia you tend to see the long elongating branches, and so they would be shaped differently. So understanding how the tree grows naturally is a key part of the foliage propagation.
Now, Peter, we see this team working, and we see Mr. Suzuki-san giving instructions. What is the organization of tasks in the team when they're working together on a tree like this?
もう彼たちほとんど僕の考え分かってるからそのポイントだけここがこうだよっていうぐらい言うだけでほとんどもう一緒に何年も10年もやってるから分かりますね。
And so the apprentices in particular have been working with Mr. Suzuki for so long that they understand his approach and his ideas. He has already drilled into them what they need to do, and so they don't need much guidance. And so all he needs to do is just tell them the rough idea of what he wants to do, and then obviously the sort of final work he will oversee. But really there is, once you've been doing it for so long underneath somebody else, you second guess what they're going to do, and you already know what they're going to do before they tell you to do it. So we're in a sort of situation like that. So.
今任せる弟子のことの話になったんですけど、なんで私が弟子を持って盆栽を教えようかと思ったのは、亡くなった師匠が最後の言葉として鈴木君いい盆栽といい弟子を残しなさいっていうのが師匠まで有名になったんで、今弟子を取って、教えてます。その目的は技術だけじゃなくて、盆栽って人の愛情によっての命のリレーだから、盆栽作家として盆栽をやりながらその命の尊さとかいろんなことを世界の人にまた広めたいなと思います。
And so talking about sort of taking on apprentices and the importance of having an apprentice, they're not only there just to sort of do the work. The reason why Mr. Suzuki took on apprentices is in part due to the last words of his master. Obviously Mr. Suzuki was the final apprentice of his master, and he told him as he was kind of finishing up, go off and make good bonsai and leave behind good apprentices. Because in that way the skills, the knowledge will be left behind, will continue on. But not just that, through doing bonsai you learn a lot about life, you come into contact with lots of different people. It's a sort of connection through generations of ideas, of love for nature, of love for bonsai and such like, and it's very important that that continuation occurs, and he's looking to follow in the words of his master, and he's doing that not only domestically but internationally as well.
僕の師匠が72の時に僕が18で入って最初は断られたの。どうしてかというと6年教える師匠には時間ないからダメだよって言われたんだけど、師匠と境遇が似てたから最後の弟子として取ってくださいました。
So when he first approached his master to take him on as an apprentice, his master was in his 70s and initially said that he wouldn't do it because he didn't have the time to sort of continue on the sort of 6-year apprenticeship, teaching him for the next 6 years. And so he said no initially, but Mr. Suzuki asked again, and there was a kind of a deeper connection between the two men. And he took him on as his final apprentice, his kind of like last work.
それで僕も60過ぎたからでもまだ時間があるから本当に盆栽を学びたい子そういう子が本気でいたらもう僕の学んだこと全部教えたいからもし挑戦する人いたら来てみてください。
And so Mr. Suzuki's just turned 60 and he's still got plenty of time left. He still has the desire to take on apprentices and teach them or allow them to learn everything that he knows, to teach them everything that he knows. So if there's anybody who thinks that they are worthy of the challenge, then please come and have a word. Don't all rush at once.
それが僕ができる盆栽界の恩返しかと思うので本当に学びたいことだったらちょっと厳しいかもしれないけど徹底的に教えます。
And so for those people who really love bonsai, he feels that it's his kind of duty, his obligation to the bonsai world in order to sort of pass on his knowledge. It might be through a quite severe way, but for those people who genuinely want to sort of learn, he is willing to teach. Do you have a question? So the question was regarding language.
言としては教えるのはどうやってですか？言葉ね。英語を喋るな。
そうね。日本語もちょっとままならないんですけど、たまたまスタッフにスペインの子とかいろんな国の子がいるから伝えられるのと、あとは本当に見て覚えてもらうことが本当に大事だと思うんで、うちにはまあ自分で言うのなんだけど、鉢、色、掛け軸、超一流の盆栽が全部あるから、そこから学んでいただければ最高だと思うんだけどね。
And so obviously he only sort of really speaks Japanese, but there are many international kind of his apprentices are from all over the world. There's somebody from Spain, somebody out there, French, German, Korean, Chinese. It's lots of people come from around the world, and the way in which you learn is not necessarily through words, but it's through doing and through experiencing. You don't know the difference between an antique Chinese pot and something which has been made to look like an antique pot through a picture. You only get to really learn and understand it by touching it, by feeling it, by seeing it every day, sometimes by licking it. It's that experience that you learn from, and that cannot be recreated through words. It can only be recreated by being there and doing it. And so although there may be a language barrier, it's not as important as you might think. When I first started my apprenticeship, not under Mr. Suzuki, but under Mr. Kunio Kobayashi, I didn't speak a word of Japanese other than 2 beers please. Even if I only wanted one, so I had to do 2, and drink them both. But in retrospect, it was a very good thing that I couldn't speak Japanese or understood what was saying, because I had to look and understand everything that was going on. So rather than waiting for verbal commands, you would always be looking and seeing what needed to be done, what was happening. You see, and you repeat, and you learn. And so going back to the kind of the question about why, why does Mr. Suzuki not really need to say anything too much? The communication between the apprentices and the master is one which happens without words. And so the language barrier isn't as important as you might think. And if you really wanted to kind of do it and succeed, then learning some Japanese would obviously be of great benefit.
Meanwhile, you may have noticed that you're actually looking at a very big piece of deadwood, so you don't really see what's going on with the foliage. And I asked them, well, hey, keep track of that. The audience wants to see what you're doing. But no, they say, at this point, we're now getting to a stage where the surprise is much better if we wait a little bit. We work on the tree, and then we'll flip it around so you can see the final image that we've produced. So, yes, it is on purpose that you only look at the back of the tree right now to get a better impression later on.
I'm just doing around the block.
And while Peter gets a look, is there anybody who has any questions?
It's not bad. Another question. There we go.
So is the sanding of the deadwood pure aesthetic, or does it have a purpose in preserving the deadwood?
You mean sandblasting?
Well, there was powerful sanding today, and sandblasting is your video.
Okay.
So the question that was asked is whether the sanding of the deadwood is purely aesthetic or whether there's other reasons for it as well.
The main reason for it is aesthetic, in order to try and make it in order to try and make it look as natural as possible, rather than for any sort of preservative sort of nature of it. But in doing so, basically we'll be removing any of the soft wood, and it's in that sort of soft wood that sort of bacteria and fungus will thrive and create further rotting. So it would have a sort of secondary preservative effect as a result. But really, it's the lime sulfur application that is the biggest sort of preservative effect, because it kills everything. Is one of the big reasons. Any other questions?
Well, if there are questions, then I do have a question, because what I find very interesting is that the team is continuously also cleaning up around the tree, cleaning up the floor, and I've noticed when I was visiting Mr. Suzuki's nursery also how spotlessly clean the premises were. Is there a reason behind continuously cleaning up while they're still working and busily pruning?
If you don't look busy, you get smacked.
I'm sure that's not the only answer.
もうペースに近づいてるから一番前にしてる。
So we just said we're sort of getting closer to the final result, and as you get closer and closer to the kind of the final result, the lower apprentices, their job has been done and they have to just sort of disappear, and it then goes on up the hierarchy to the people who are more qualified to do the finishing touches, and as a result of them not having anything to do, then they have to look busy. They can't just stand by the side and just check their phone whilst their master's working, so you've got to kind of look busy. We've got about 10 minutes left before we finish, so if you've got any questions.
Yeah. Is Mr. Suzuki going to take over the nursery, or are you going to make all the
the question whether the son will take over the nursery from the father when the time comes.
もう一人息子がいるから、美術館も作りたいから、どっちかに任せて思ってます。
He's not thinking about that yet. There's plans in front for kind of creating a museum, and so he has another son who he left home, and so there's opportunities for both of them going forward. So, but yes, the general idea is that his son will continue on the family tradition and the name.
Question?
Yep.
Will he repot the tree this year or next year?
So if we look at a tree that is newly styled, at what phase do you think about repotting? Will it be this year or maybe next year? And what are the future plans for this?
枝が打ったり、来年とかにそう。
The best thing to do in terms of repotting would be to wait until next year. Obviously, he feels that everyone's got this desire to see the kind of like the final tree as quickly as possible. But the best thing would be to wait for next year.
まあ枝を出したり、木のあと質問するからどんな味があるか質問しますかって。
So really, in terms of the development of the tree and the health of the tree, it would be better to wait for another year. Not only just through the tree hasn't been severely worked, but there could be small breaks in the branches and things that the tree would need to recover from. And asking it to recover from 2 major operations in 1 year is quite difficult. So it's better to wait another year. And obviously the tree has had its initial styling. So it's got 3 or 4 years of growth ahead of it before it reaches a sort of final sort of image. But it's a very good question. And Mr. Suzuki would like to turn it around and ask the audience, particularly the person who asked the question, what type of pot would you put it in? So, anybody have any ideas as to what type of pot they would put it in?
Unglazed, rectangular.
Unglazed rectangular?
Yeah.
Or demo?
Or maybe a moco. Or maybe a moco one.
Or それか木工の
He likes the idea of the mocco shape, so like the quince flower. Anybody else?
A big pot?
向こうでも飾りがありましたけど、例えばまだわかんないですけど、これを木工の鉢にやって、そしたら食の形できたら添えるもの、掛け軸、こんなのがいいかちょっと考えてください。
So think about how you would display this tree as well. So not just the pot choice, but in terms of the stand, accessory object, etc. You have a think about what you would do in order to highlight the character of the tree.
ヒントは例えばこれの添えにするものはこれが生えてる自然の状況を頭に浮かべて添えを考える。その自然界にある軸空間にはこんなにいいかなってそんなのだといいですね。今もう考えてあります。
So he's sort of thinking about how you would display it. It's important to really look at and understand and grasp the character of the tree itself, and to think of things that would accentuate that character, highlight the natural environment in which it would be, in terms of a scroll if you were to use one, or the accent object, as well as the stand and the pot. He has an idea in his mind himself.
大体できてますけど、最後の微妙な仕上げに入っています。
So we're getting close to being finished, and so now it's just the final little touches. So this is where the removal of those older leaves sort of really comes into play. So we have finished, so please look and enjoy, don't fall off the stage. Day1.
最初の荒掛けのスタートですので、これからは目摘みとかいろいろやって枝の充実を図っていきます。さっきお話くだったように鉢のチェンジ、車で言えばいいホイールに変えるみたいな感じで変えていくといいと思いますね。
And so this is obviously the first kind of rough initial styling, and so this is the foundation of the tree. So from now over the next few years, there will be a lot of bud pinching, development of adventitious buds, and building up the volume of those foliage pads to perform. And to go back to the point about changing the pot, it's like kind of changing the wheels on your car. You do it at the appropriate time, and that would be a good idea.
鉢なんですけど、さっきおっしゃったように木工も素晴らしいですけど、例えば食のことを課題のことを考えると、より自然の荒々しさを出したいから、例えば、食を普通のオーソドックスのではなくて根食っていって自然味のある食にして、それに合うには鉢が丸い方がいいので丸にして、ただ丸だと優しいから外縁っていって丸の中でもひっくり反っているような強いのにしたら合うと思いますね。
So going back to the point about the pot, if it was placed into a mokko type or a rectangular pot, then thinking about how it would be displayed, you would need to have a lot more of an orthodox sort of rectangular table. But one of the kind of the key characteristics of this tree that Mr. Suzuki is really trying to represent is the wildness of nature, the severity of nature. And in order to do that, he would like to sort of see it displayed on a table in a way that would accentuate that. And the example that he gave was one of a root stand. That was the dance. So something with great movement and actually gives it a bit of height, because obviously this, the space underneath the tree is going to be one of the sort of key things. And so having a table which will allow that characteristic to come out would be ideal. And so in order to use such a stand, then having a round pot would be ideal, and not just like quite a soft kind of round pot, something with quite severe angle and sort of quite heavy lips, something quite strong and powerful looking, in order to balance the kind of the visual weight of the tree and allow it to be displayed in such a way.
それで本体の鉢の合わせと食の合わせがあって、まさに自然界の厳しいところからせり出すような位置を想像していて、下にはすごい厳しい環境だから水石かなんかの厳しい石を置くことによってよりその荒々しさが表現できると思います。
And so in order to again really highlight that severe nature that he can see this tree growing in, having an accent object such as a suseki, a stone which has got that same sort of mountainous, severe character shown in it would be something that would be a great idea to use.
そしてichii、それの水石のちょっと厳しいの、ここの空間に軸として そういう山の厳しいところの下に滝があるような景色想像してもらうから、ここにはすごい広がりを出せるために天空に舞うこう飛びみたいなのをしたら鳥がいたら余計広がると思います。
And so, the idea of you sort of using a scroll, the image that he would like to use would be something that would help to sort of expand that view, that idea of a severe mountain type environment. So, for example, using a bird flying off into the distance would be something that would be a good idea.
そんな感じで仕上がりましたので、皆さんどうですか？
That's about it. He says we've finished. How do you like it? Does anybody have any questions? We've done it in like 2 hours, so we've got 2 hours of questions. Yes, sir.
To what extent, and if at all, did his approach of philosophy change when his son came back from his
So the question was, to what extent did Mr. Suzuki's approach, thought processes changed after his son returned back from Mr. Kimura's?
本当にただいい木を手掛けるだけでなくて、僕の代で僕の前から先代の方たちが作ってきた盆栽を僕受け継いでるから、僕の後も受け継いでくれる、精神を木村さんから教わってますけど、よりこう引き締めてやってもらいたいなという気持ちが強くなりました。
And so the basic sort of idea was that Hiroaki went to Mr. Kimura's and learned a lot of bonsai skills and techniques, and learned Mr. Kimura's approach to bonsai from a technical, an aesthetic and a spiritual perspective. What Mr. Suzuki is trying to do for his son now is to sort of not teach him any techniques, but to further his understanding of like the heart of bonsai, the spirit of bonsai, which he has had passed down to him from previous generations as well, and his kind of interpretation of what bonsai means. He wants to try and transmit that to his son and continue that on for the next generation. That answer the question? Okay. Next question. For the potting? Yeah. Okay, so the question for about the repotting is like, where will the soil like be? I think is the question, yeah?
いい質問で、
Very good question.
こういう粘りがね、こう岩肌でこうしっかり噛んでるという、こういう粘りを出したいから、こういうところを全部出してあげて、これがボタッとしないようにこう削ったりして起伏をつけて、より自然にやって、鉢面はこのくらいになると思います。
So I'd like to try and get the. You can see there's afterwards you'll be able to see. Previously it had been in a much smaller pot, and the previous kind of root ball comes to here. And so ideally we'd like to try and get back to there. And underneath here you can just about see a few of the roots. There's one big one across here. There will be sort of the idea of some very sort of strong, powerful, grasping roots within there, and he would like to obviously expose those as much as possible. But the ideal sort of soil line will be somewhere kind of like around here. But obviously, that's something that would be determined as and when it is repotted. Any more questions? Yes. There's one more question. Yes.
When was the last time this tree was touched?
like this. 前回の
ほとんど針金の傷がないから、おそらく穴木から一度こう枝を裂いたぐらいでほとんどかけてないと思います。
He's not done any work on it himself in terms of the branching. So the question was, when was the last time that any work such as this was done on the tree? And he himself has done very little work on it other than a little bit of bouncing, pruning and such like. And there's no kind of obvious marks of wire damage or any kind of obvious signs that it had been previously styled. So this is basically the first time it's had a really good styling. Previously it's always been a very rough piece of material. Okay, right. Any more questions there? Good? Okay, right, we're going to wrap it up. いいです。
今日はどうも本当にありがとうございました。